Hey, thanks for having me. I've listened to the Steam Streak Radio a few times, and I tried to get in once before, but I'm really excited to be here. I think this is a great platform, and it looks like it's very active, which is also very cool. Yeah, we are working around the clock, but things are great. We're hiring a lot of people. I'm going through a lot of resumes right now. We're getting a lot more, as we're bringing on more people, we're trying to get more organized. We're starting to use Scrum. We've got a great Scrum board in the office now, and we're um, just really making sure that we're driving ahead on all these social media improvements. And there's other things too. There's big picture stuff. I'm working on a vision document right now that I'm looking forward to kind of publishing on Steam and getting some feedback on. And we've got all these events coming up. I can't tell you how excited I am for Steam Fest and for the Steam meetup in Johannesburg. And I've just been informed there's another one in Berlin early next year. Um, is anyone here going to be at Steam Fest by any chance? Nice. Um, it seems like there's going to be a good number of people there. I think there's already 80 people registered.
Sounds great. I have a question for you, Ned. I'm just joining. Have you thought about delegating the voting logic optimization to the individual users in the form of channels? So someone who wants to create a channel with a specialized voting logic could go ahead and create such a thing using some kind of a smart contract or something. That way you wouldn't have to hard code the voting logic and incentives.
There's a few things we've thought about with voting. Most recently, we've been talking about delegated curation pools, and I could be wrong. I kind of want to ask you some more specifics about your idea, but um, delegated curation is essentially a setup where you can do Curie. You take a concept like Curie or Robinhood Whale, I'm guessing you've seen, and you just formalize all the accounting and the logic of that on the blockchain. So if I've got 100 Steam power, I can delegate that to any other account on the chain.
Yeah, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about some topics. You want, for example, voting rules that let people vote for a year, like for example philosophy, or breaking news. You want to limit the voting time period to a very short time period because it's quickly obsolete breaking news, right? So you can't really optimize for all topics the current voting logic because there is only one. And so what I would like to see is that there are many different voting logics tied to different channels or topics.
Right. I completely understand, where the impetus comes from for that. And we've talked about that a lot because we'd all love to see sub-communities get the support that they need to become popular and to grow. And, we could also see different behavioral outcomes with different rule sets.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're trying to optimize for everybody right now. And that's a huge mess, and you're wasting a lot of time trying to do that optimization. It's going to change all the time for what's needed, right? So why not let the users optimize their own voting incentives and logic using some kind of system? It would be beautiful.
So to me, delegated curation pools have an opportunity to help on that front. For instance, if I wanted to sponsor a certain topic, maybe it would be philosophy. I could say, well, if you want to create a pool, anyone who joins this pool as a voter has to have, first they have to sort of verify their uniqueness with me, their identity in a way. And then the second rule for being a part of that pool is they have to curate the philosophy section. And, that's a pretty simple set of rules. Something like that could drive more attention to these sub-communities and sub-topics. And maybe not perfectly, but it's set up that may allow the market to figure things out on its own a little bit more.
To me, you're kind of robotic voice. I don't know if your connection is breaking up or it's mine.
Okay, closed all my applications. Do you guys think that was on my end or someone else?
Yeah, it's all your fault. We're blaming you. Just kidding.
I don't know. Did you guys catch any of my response prior?
Yeah, we were. Yeah, the thing about voting pools is fine, but it's a very. It doesn't change anything to the voting logic. It just changes the way you can utilize your stake delegated to others and let them curate for you.
Right, but what it does is it allows you to set certain rules for certain topics. So you would kind of need patrons or sponsors for these different tags. And it may not be the only solutions. Perhaps, there's other ways of creating a new tag system that has these alternate rule sets. There have been some discussions about it, but it's a big project. So if you have a spec, like some real specific aspects of the implementation in mind, I would be happy to take a look.
Oh, I just wrote a small post about using smart contracts to capture all the votes for one channel and then delegate it according to the logic of the contract. But yeah, I could probably send you a link. But I have a different question with respect to the economics of the system.
Sure, go for it.
So currently there is about 10% that goes to content creators. My question is, this number seems very arbitrary. Wouldn't it make sense for the delegates to be able to adjust, or the witnesses to adjust this number up and down? Because who knows if the system is really sustainable with 10% leaving the system in a sense. If people choose to withdraw, it's kind of difficult for the Steam power holders to compensate for that 10% loss.
Sure. So I think if we dive into the numbers a little bit, we talk about 10% going to content creators. It's a little bit less technically. It's more about, I believe, 8.6 would be a little bit more close to accurate, and 75% of that would be paid out as Steam power. And that's because 50% is being paid to the curators, and they're only being paid in Steam power. And then the other 50% that is paid to the content creators, 50% of what they get is paid out as Steam power. So there's only so much kind of leaving the system, and the Steam dollars that are paid out are kind of paid out as debt. So the way that they affect the market for Steam is not... it's kind of a second order effect where there might be some arbitrage effects, but another way of looking at this is, if you're talking about 10% inflation overall, I mean, you look at other systems like Bitcoin. When Bitcoin was born, it had about 100% inflation per year, and then it quickly kind of got down to its 10%. It's had its halvings, and now it's at like 5%. But one could say that in that sort of system, there's value leaving in a way where these miners have, they have revenue, they've got to pay taxes, they've got to sell, they've got to make profit. So, looking at those two things side by side.
I get that it's when as long as people are adopting the system, then the 10% is very low because people are buying into the system and pushing up the price and offsetting this 10% or 8% or whatever it is, debasement of the Steam Power holders. But what I'm more is talking about is the method of setting this number, because it's a very arbitrary number. And what if it turns out as a Steam Power holder that you are unable to make enough money curating, posting content, and selling your votes in order to offset this debasement? Wouldn't it be interesting to have a method of adjusting this number, tuning it up or down in accordance with what is actually possible?
To add on to what Mughat just said, would it be possible to set it as a witness variable?
Yeah, that's exactly where I kind of saw, the question going. If it were parameterized, then yes, it would be something that the witnesses could dial up and dial down. The question is, would that be a change that would pass? Would the witnesses want that responsibility? Would the large stakeholders kind of look at that and say, is this something that potentially affects, property rights and things like that? That's some of the biggest resistance to change in a system like this, and you can look at Bitcoin as an example too, is there's resistance to change when people feel like emission rates change, because emission rates kind of represent, I don't know if they're exactly property rights, but they seem to feel that way for certain stakeholders. It would be a tough change to get through. I think, there's only so many experiments that we can pack into this thing. I mean, that might be one worth looking into more. But I'd be interested to also see, if you feel strongly about it, a written proposal, that could gather more community feedback.
Well, yeah, I would be interested in that. I've done some work I did work in making something else a witness parameter. I forget what it was now. I can look, but I ran into an issue where it was difficult to add in arbitrary witness parameters, because right now there's no extension system onto the existing parameters. My methodology was, when I added a new witness parameter, it actually invalidated all the old blocks, so I couldn't figure out how to do it. Is there any way to do that going into the future?
You're saying, is there a way to suggest a parameter into the next upgrade?
Yes, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, I think you've really got to work with the back-end devs on that, and that's not just guys who work for me, like Michael Vandenberg and Ben Johnson and Dan, but also guys like Arhag and Abit and Smooth. Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of a communications process that has to go into, getting these things brought into a potential upgrade.
Can I ask something not regarding witnesses, if everybody has the question? You probably know the project Peer Hub, the trading project.
I was the first person to buy anything on Peer Hub.
Okay, cool. I was gonna ask if you plan. I mean, obviously, those kind of projects, for me, anyways, it's really important to raise the awareness of what the SD is actually worth to everybody. And are you planning to integrate anything like that into Steam itself?
Are we talking about integrating a marketplace where people can
Yes,
kind of open up shops?
Basically, yeah.
We've been really excited about the ideas of having, marketplaces, and there's a couple ways to organize these. I mean, we see the Craigslist format, we see the eBay format. You've kind of got the Open Bazaar format where everyone has their own stores and you can navigate through stores. we want to do something like that. We haven't finalized how we will implement it, but yeah, I mean, as far as representing Steemit.com, I think that there's potential to add in a service like that. That it would be a nice marriage just because of the token integration. It's all right there at everyone's fingertips.
Hmm. Yeah, it would raise the awareness of the worth of SD, apart from it just being, a coin where a token, which somebody sells and buys, and that's it.
Right,
Give it
exactly.
more value.
So we've kind of bootstrapped this social network, but there's perhaps one might argue an even larger goal in bootstrapping a currency. Currencies have huge network effects, probably even larger than the social networks, the most popular social networks that we see today, like Facebook. Currencies have market capitalizations into the trillions of dollars. And if we could get a network effect for the marketplace and for the currencies being used, the Steem dollars, we could start to see some more magic. I would agree with you there.
Definitely.
One thing we were talking about the other day was people behaving kind of self-destructively, or at least hurting the system by exploiting it and powering down as quickly as possible and just cashing out. And these kinds of people, and these people are essentially, they don't really care about the system. They just want to earn as much as quickly as possible at the expense of the system and even themselves to some extent. And what is preventing them from really getting out of the system is that they take so long for them to power down. And one thing I would like to be able to see is that they somehow could exit the system quicker, so that people were earning the Steem power by actually being valuable to the system rather than not.
Right. Well, the only way to beat the power down schedule is to sell one's account or to forget about it entirely. And that's a challenge, I think, for most of these people who want to get out. Everyone's in a different position, has a different perspective on what's going on with the system, so there might be some people like that. As far as people voting up certain things on the site, I mean, it's hard to. Nobody wants to see something. No one wants to feel like the system's being abused. And there's a certain amount that can be done where you can kind of look at people's reputation and history. I mean, there's so much information on the blockchain that can be looked at, but ultimately, the best solutions, in my eyes, for the long run, come from just having more information that's easily accessible, and that starts with simple things like profiles. People want to know who they're dealing with on the site. They want to understand the magic behind upvotes. They're saying, okay, why is this post getting upvoted? And so the more information that can kind of be, at the community's fingertips, the better, because auditability matters. And there's two competing things where you have this network of value, and on the network of value, auditability matters. But on a network of people and identity, sometimes privacy matters a lot too. So the trade-off, is kind of, if you want to be really successful in the community in terms of obtaining more value, you'll probably need to put more information forward, as we move into the future. And that's all part of kind of building a small town on the internet, where you have really positive behavior, where people are doing good for themselves and for others, because there's kind of a collective value, whereas the value of a small town becomes greater and greater. Everyone who lives in that town sort of benefits. So with Steem, I think we definitely want to have that sort of small town feeling as we go forward, and I think that means more people opting in and putting more information forward. And then on top of that, you probably have some people who are probably bigger Steem power holders who are saying, well, we really value the people who are putting this information forward, and they're saying who they are, where they're from, really kind of showing us their brand and that sort of thing. And we'll vote those people up, and people who aren't putting that information forward, unless they have a good reason, unless they come forward and they sort of declare pseudo identity and say, hey, I'm an undercover reporter covering some WikiLeaks stuff or something, and I want to put this here. So I don't want to put my identity forward, but I can prove that I really obtained this information and all that. Unless it's a situation like that, I think hopefully we get to an environment where people really benefit and maybe only benefit if they've given their public information to their private information, given their information to the public in a way where trust can be established, where we don't need to have what some people might call witch hunting or whatever. If there were no private information at all, there never would be any witch hunting, period. So in the future, if people have an opportunity to do better by being more public, then we'll see more public information and we'll see less of this perceived abuse.
Well, doesn't sorry, Margaret, don't everybody registers with their Facebook account, so you could make really an option for somebody who wants to be more open to just share his information on his Facebook account, on the Steam account, for example. If you're talking about openness.
Absolutely. And as far as Steemit is concerned, and Steemit just being kind of one interface on top of Steam, we as a company, we want to get better and better with helping people put that information forward and, have certain identifiers that help people kind of do the auditability, in terms of reputation, in terms of, people being able to describe themselves, just profile information, basic profile information will go a long way.
Well, Nate Brune is working on something as I believe as a fork to add that if he wants to speak about it.
That's coming along. It's just it's a fork to the main Steemit interface that would allow you to set your profile picture.
That's great, and everything being open source, and the fact that you're doing it on a fork means potentially that's something that Steemit could adopt as long as you make your modifications, something that we can use. If there's a restrictive license, then we couldn't. But
changing topics again. One thing I see as a danger is undermining the core value of the Steam Power. If, for example, you let things be governed by different things like reputation or something I can't even imagine, but taking away power from actual stake rather than that is a philosophical question. Have you made some thoughts about that, Don?
Just to clarify, you're saying have we made thoughts about people being able to give away their Steam Power?
No. As it is now, that your power is really derived from how much stake you have, right? So how much Steam Power you have. And that determines what you can do in the system. But there is also your reputation. And that, in a sense, takes away some of the power. So it undermines the value of Steam Power to a small extent. But it's there. And you could imagine other systems being put in place where a number of votes would count or for something. So it's just that there is a concern of mine that the interface might implement something that undermines the power of the fundamental unit.
One thing you said was that reputation on the site, on Steemit, seems to undermine Steam Power. Is that correct?
Yeah, to a small extent, you can do something when you have reputation where it's disconnected from the amount of stake you have.
Right. So the thing with reputation is there's reputation all over the place, and sometimes it's invisible, and sometimes it's it's actually kind of written down and calculated. On Steam, it's calculated there on the site, and it's, to me, it's really just one metric of reputation. It's really just Steemit's interpretation of reputation, and I wouldn't even say that it's really an optimal one. It's something that we came up with as the site was kind of coming up. I think we first posted those reputation metrics in July, or might have been August, and it's just one additional piece of information, and it's just one other way of sorting the site. But I think what we have to remember is Steemit is just one interface into this platform, and on other interfaces, we could have other reputation metrics. There's also reputation completely outside of these interfaces, where some people may actually know some of the Steam users in person. So they may have their own interpretations of different users' reputations. So all these reputation numbers all they really are new pieces of information. Do they undermine Steam power? I don't know.
Not currently.
I don't think so.
He's just worried that in the future, I believe, from Dan's recent proposal for a reputation token, he doesn't want the Steam power to be undermined in that capacity. I'm more open to changes towards the influence and power on the Steemit platform, such as including reputation tokens. I think it might be beneficial, but he's just worried about it, the SP power, the stake being reduced and changing how that works on Steemit.
Okay. I didn't realize we were talking about Dan's proposal. Okay. Dan is he's a constant problem solver, and he's constantly exploring new problems, and they're not necessarily always inside the frame of Steam. It's just the way his mind works. He's got a great mind for thinking about new ways of constructing these systems. And I think in that post, we had him write a disclaimer or something like that, because he likes to put out these ideas and stir up discussion. But I don't know that he was proposing something in particular for Steam. But I think that the point remains that there's probably better ways of having quick and easy formulas for reputation than Steemit.com currently supports. So hopefully that article helps us just think about these things a little bit more, and continue to make things better. But stability matters. So we don't want to get to a point where we're constantly layering experiment on top of experiment with Steam and changing the rules. One of the natures of blockchain is that you kind of build these things with a set of rules, and the core rules really shouldn't change. People want stability. They value stability in a lot of cases, and big changes that don't have really strong consensus can be divisive and can hurt the value proposition of the blockchain. It's kind of like having a board game, where maybe Steam represents the first time chess was created, or maybe it represents the first time Risk was created, right? And it's this experiment with a set of rules, but then if you want to go and create another board game, that other board game is going to have a different set of rules. It's going to be a different experiment. So the things that we want to do for Steam, we want to do things that only add to the system and really don't take away any of the rights or any of the existing the benefits of any of the existing rules as they are.
One thing that concerns me a little bit is that, with respect to censorship resistance, is that there are only 19 delegates or witnesses. And it would be possible to target those witnesses if some kind of government entity wanted to coerce Steemit into doing something, I don't know what. But imagine it's really big and there are only 19 witnesses. Isn't that kind of vulnerable?
That's a great question, but I would say that it's still very resistant to tampering and to any sort of force. That said, I mean, these are variables that could potentially be changed if the community had a consensus that 19 is not enough, that 27 would be better, that 39 would be better. Potentially that could be pushed through. There are technically more than 19 witnesses today. There's 21 block producers in a round, and there's a list of currently more than, I don't know, maybe 80 fully upgraded witnesses. And so what that means is if someone is taken down, if some witness note is taken down, if some person is compromised, they can be removed from their position. People can remove their votes from that voter, and someone can then become a block producer who was somewhere else in the queue. Maybe they were 25th in the queue, 26th in the queue, and then they get a vote from somebody, and they move up into the top 19, and now we have a new block producer. So it's meant to be resilient in the way that there's the ability to shuffle the witnesses at the right moment, on a whim even, and that gives the system more resiliency.
Speaking of shuffling the witnesses on a whim, so can you explain a little bit of your motivations behind Charlie Shrem?
Who's asking the question right now?
That's Nate Brune.
So Charlie, I met. Thanks, Nate, for bringing this up. So Charlie, I met after he had come to Steem. He showed up to the platform. He showed up with enthusiasm and energy. And to tell you the truth, I didn't know that much about Charlie. I got into Bitcoin in 2013, beginning of 2013, and his business had been around for a little bit, I think. But I never used the service or anything like that. But then he had some things happen. He was out of the industry for a while, so I hadn't really heard of him. And he comes in, and it's just very apparent that he has a lot of energy. He has a lot of passion for Steem. He's got a big following. He's very, very well respected in the cryptocurrency and blockchain community. And he decided he wanted to go full-time into this ecosystem. And, with all of his entrepreneurial experience, with his deep Rolodex, he's a great spokesman. With his abilities there, I felt that he would be a very valuable role model in the ecosystem, and I wanted to support him because when we get people like that who are going to go in full time and represent the community well, I think that that's something that benefits everybody. So I want to see him do well, and so I voted for him.
That's great. I agree. He is a great character. Can I ask you about your philosophical ideas and values?
Sure, go for it.
How do you evaluate a person's character? What kind of virtues are you looking for? What's your standard of value in a sense?
So my personality type is ENTJ, and yes, why?
It's the same as me.
Well, then, maybe this. Maybe you share the same feeling of intuition. And when you meet people, you you can feel their intentions, and you can feel their passion, and you just feel that off the bat, you know which way something is going to go, and you know if you're onto something good, and you know if you're onto something bad. And if you're onto something bad, you back away, and if you're onto something good, you let it come together, and you just follow your gut feeling. And I get a good feeling from Charlie, and and then I follow up, and I do more research. I've talked to him on the phone. I was actually driving down from New York. I was in New York the week before last, having some meetings in the city, and on the way back, decided that I wanted to meet Charlie in person. So he was in Pennsylvania, and I take 78 and then 81 down to Virginia. So he's right on the way, and so I had lunch with him and his fiance because I wanted to learn more. So usually I follow my gut with these sorts of things, and then I do more research. I try to really, I try not to cut corners when I need to really understand people, but I do let my intuition guide me at first.
Coming back to what Fear said about adding photographs and everything, are you planning any changes to the UI specifically? Well, in general, are you planning any changes to the UI?
Oh, tons of changes to the UI. I think, the social media experience is where we need to bolster things most. We talk about new users getting to the site, and there's certainly a lot of familiarity they probably get with something like Steemit.com, but there's still a lot of user experience improvements that we can bring to the table. And part of that is images and profiles, and having a fully functional what you see is what you get editor, where you can upload pictures right there, and we'll host them. So yeah, those are absolutely features we're working on, and we're very excited about.
What about the fact that I know this is maybe somebody likes it, maybe somebody doesn't, but for me personally, speaking about for example, about the Resteem or the reblog button or whatever you want to call it.
Hey, can I just jump in and ask you guys, what do you like better, reblog, repost, or Resteem?
Resteem, I think.
Resteem.
I love it.
Back to the question about the Resteem that everybody's shouting now, Resteem. Wouldn't it be better that the Resteem feed was on a different tab rather than the... I'm not saying this is everybody else's opinion. This is only my personal opinion, but I personally think that maybe it would be an option, at least for somebody who wants to have a separate feed for the posts of the people that he follows and the posts that are Resteemed.
Yeah, Nate can probably speak about that, because he made a proposal to have an option where you can toggle between just the people you follow and their reblogs, or just their reblogs. So it would be a three functionality.
Yeah, that's what Twitter does on people's profiles as well.
I think Twitter really has set the standard, for this sort of information shuffling and sharing. And we did Resteem, and it's certainly improved the concept a little bit, but it needs some improvement. I think the suggestions you guys are talking about are exactly what needs to be done. Nate, I know you communicate quite a bit with a lot of the developers. So if you're working on that, let's make sure that we're communicating on those points. That's exactly the thing. I mean, you look at these other social media sites that have been around for more than a decade, and they've figured it out. We don't need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to social media. We just happen to have this extra tool that nobody else has, which is this decentralization of the database, which is really cool for the future of content and for the future of bringing value back to the users. We can talk about the attention economy later, but also like the core token Steam is this fire hose of tokens where it creates this layer of value that anyone can effectively get access to, and other sites can't really copy that so easily. But we can do what they've already mastered. So let's not reinvent the wheel with social media. Let's look at what others are doing really well, and let's great artists steal, as they say.
Copy.
So
Borrow.
I think good artists borrow and great artists steal.
Well, one more thing to add to that before anybody else jumps in some different questions. I remember that, judging that most of the team, the whole team of Steam comes from BitShares. I think everybody knows that. Well, 99%. In BitShares, there was, I've been from ProtoShares, and there was really...
Your mic has
Your
gone
mic's
out.
kind of...
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Thanks. In BitShares, there was a really good thing that before any new thing...
Your mic's gone
It's
out
gone
again.
Yeah, sorry. Before any new thing was released, there was a lot of discussion done on the forum, on the BitShares forum. In Steam, judging that it's a social platform, usually everything is released without... without sharing it before or without seeing if it's actually going to be popular or not. Are there any plans to introduce anything like that? If you understand what I'm trying to say.
So what you're talking about is maybe you're even asking for a more defined pattern of communication for releases and changes.
Definitely.
And we've definitely tried to get better with that. We've tried to summarize release notes a little bit more. Ultimately, when we're talking about the protocol, we don't want to make huge changes. I think the only thing that's kind of on my mind, and I mentioned this at the beginning, so for anyone who just showed up, we are still thinking about curation guilds and things like that. But then anything else on the protocol that we would potentially bring to the table, we would try to bring to the table as an addition to the feature set that's already there, and not a change that changes any of the rules. So hopefully that leads to only really great conversation about these potential features. I think BitShares had a lot of challenges in that there was such a learning process for everyone. We talk about Dan and Dan leading this project, and it wasn't clear how to get to the final product. So a lot of times, the team would pivot one way, and then they'd realize, well, there was a better solution the other way, and sometimes those conversations about change, brought strife to some of the members of the community. So there's some challenges there that hopefully we won't have to face. Steam, one of the beautiful things about Steam is when it was released, it was almost a feature complete blockchain. It hasn't been. You guys have been around. There's been, some changes as a community we've wanted to push through and things like that. But it's pretty incredible how nearly complete it is, and once it's complete, and we can kind of say this thing is solid, we can just move on to the next layers, the social media layer, the attention economy layer, the reputation and identity layer, and all these things that augment the protocol.
I think the Curation Guild is a great idea, honestly, and especially to deal with the earlier issue we were talking about, how the daily pool is sometimes being manipulated by high Steam power users, and I'd like to talk about that, a bit of a segue, since you mentioned that community consensus can allow changes to the way the platform operates. Even though it was originally coded a certain way, they can be changed. As you mentioned, the way the witnesses work, or the amount of witnesses in the list, that can be changed on the community consensus. So I'm glad that you're considering some changes in terms of how the the daily pool can be more adequately distributed in terms of people's influence and power of voting, because the way the Steam Power is set up is it works the same way for the witnesses, and you mentioned that we can just easily change the witnesses in the list, but it's not that easy when it's completely based on the Steam Power, because all you need is a few people with the majority of the Steam Power in order to determine who is or isn't on the list. Like, some people have made some posts and brought up some objections and tried to cast a negative light on Steemit Inc. for the ability and their power to upvote and downvote certain people on the list. I don't honestly have an issue with it, but some people have brought that up as an issue, and that it's not fair that Steemit Inc. employees have so much power. But it also applies to the upvoting in terms of, that's why I wanted to tie the two issues, the upvoting power and the SP influence, which is what Mughat had brought up, and how the daily payouts. And we've had a lot of discussions in here about this, and how there's certain, I won't name them, but there's certain whales, and they're also in the witness list, and they have a lot of influence in order to possibly collude and upvote certain specific people, and they don't curate in an honest manner to look at all the content, and they just repeatedly upvote certain people, which, when they all do it, it maximizes the payout for certain people, and therefore that drains the pool from the potential payouts that everyone else would get, and diminishes the power of the votes that everyone else in the community has when high SP power players upvote content. It reduces the amount of influence that the rest of us have in curating.
Right. So I mean, there's some definitions in there that are being used to kind of make the case, like if you talk about someone abusing the rewards pool, I mean, that takes certain definitions of what is abuse and things like that. I think when I really had convinced myself of this curation guild's idea, I realized that one of the challenges for finding the best content out there is that there's probably not enough voting power in the content market at any given time. And when that's the case, curation suffers because there's fewer curators there. But it's been demonstrated quite nicely by projects like Curie and Robinhood Whale that the more voting power is kind of delegated to more individuals, because there are many individuals who are part of these Curie and Robinhood Whale projects, the better the content is that gets discovered. So through curation guilds, what we'll see is people like myself and Dan and other whales, even guys like SVK in Europe and whoever. What will likely happen is they'll put their Steam Power into these guilds, and then more and more people can come in and just use that Steam Power, and they can use it. They might potentially just get the voting power. They could also get the economic rights to that Steam Power, which incentivizes them to be, again, even better curators. So I see that being a real solution. As far as looking at perceived problems today, it's hard because everyone has a different definition of what abuse is, and if you really, really dig into these things, it's really hard to make a sound case that there's been kind of abuse. You think about like a company like Brave New Coin coming in and starting a Brave New Coin account. Well, is there any one person behind that account, or is it just a brand? So if you talk about a whale has a couple accounts, have they just created other brands? Like what is that really? So it's really hard to then go and sort of as a community tell these people, you can't be curating this way, you can't be posting this way. Because then it rules out, things like Brave New Coin might be doing. So the real best solutions to me are these curation guilds that add more voting power to the content market, and also give newer users an opportunity to come in and have more influence. Because if they can join this curation guild, they get more influence off the bat than they would have if they just signed up and with the faucet gave them 10 Steam Power to start with. Now the other solution is because it comes back to more information, where these guilds and whales can start to set standards, and they can say, we won't vote up anyone who doesn't do X, Y, Z. So if they don't sort of declare their brand or declare their identity or declare their pseudo-identity, then they won't get our upvote. And if they really miss the mark, maybe they get a downvote, something like that. So it's these sort of checks and balances that we need to... the checks and balances really come from having more information available to everyone and from having more voting power in the content market at any given time. And I think over time we'll get there. The system will only become more and more resilient to the perceived abuse.
I agree, and that's why I agree that the curation guilds, when you did that interview with Tatiana, I was very happy that you mentioned that, and I hope you'll work on implementing that more immediately than later, because the people that join, it's an issue that people have talked about. New posters mention, the trending page, so that's gone. That they're not that in your face. That look at all these people making more than you. That's not the main page anymore. But this aspect of how the voting power works disenfranchises people when they join Steemit, and the way the influence is distributed into certain top tier known as whales. So I'm very happy that this curation guild is going to come about, and it will more adequately distribute the influence and voting power within the community. So I'm very happy about that.
We talk about new user experience and all that sort of thing. And another one of the big missing pieces is showing up to a site that holds your hand a little bit and says, hey, here's this new site. Here's how you put your profile together. Here's how you follow your first people. There's an established pattern of user onboarding, for successful social media sites. Twitter does it really well. Facebook does it really well. Eventually we'll get there to the point where when people show up, they're comfortable and they're ready to have a really great social media experience, and their experience shouldn't just depend on their ability to wield all the value. But hopefully that can be an added benefit to the system for them. But if we do things right, when people sign up, they'll have a good experience. They'll learn about the potential for the value, for the Steam power, and they won't feel like they've been led into a system and their expectations of what was going to be possible were not met.
Hey, this is Nate again, and I just had a quick question to add on to the last one. Would Steemit or anyone at Steemit consider revoking their posting keys now that that's an option?
Yeah, we made that an option, particularly for the Steemit account. But it's it's not something we're considering at this time. I mean, what you have to think about let me just go ahead and ask you why you asked that question. Let's dig into that a little bit further.
Well, just because I know it's an option now, and I haven't really seen any community pressure to maybe incentivize people to do that. I think that I'm thinking particularly witnesses. Witnesses get a lot of Steam power, and it's not necessarily because they're good curators or anything. They don't necessarily put out good content per se, but they do a good job of maintaining the network. So I'm not sure that witnesses should be the ones curating the content. So I would like to see maybe witnesses revoking their posting key. But it's kind of beside the point. I was just asking on the side.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic. I think we first started talking about Steemit Inc. employees, and I was just curious what your perspective, was there. I mean, so we don't have to go down that. But as far as witnesses, let's talk about what makes a great witness. Obviously they have to be a reliable block producer, but at a certain point, we have a lot of reliable block producers out there. So I would hope that witnesses are differentiating themselves and bringing more value to the platform than just block production, because that's become a dime a dozen. So we should really expect quite a bit from these witnesses. I mean, Dan and I have talked about for a long time, if Steem really gets to where we want it to go, you'd have businesses potentially in the industry representing witness nodes. And maybe this requires a little bit more conversation, but imagine, Poloniex has a witness node, or Coinbase has a witness node, or any of these big sort of industry businesses, set up a witness node because they want to support the Steem ecosystem. And through that's an organization that has a lot of resources, has a big Rolodex, has a lot of influence. That could be very valuable to Steem. And it could be valuable to the business running the witness node. So maybe that's where we're going with witnesses. I don't know.
Coming back to the curation guilds, do you think that they could be abused by people who could influence them more? For example, if a certain whale creates a curation guild and his, adds 10 or 12 or whatever, how many other accounts of his sub-accounts to that curation guild, could they get abused?
Everything can be abused, in my opinion, but
it can't be abused more than it will. I mean, there's obviously some spec stuff that we, will want to look closer at, as a community. But hopefully, I mean, the way that we would ultimately implement it is nothing can be abused, quote unquote, more than it can now. So if you take a whale who's got 1,000 steam power, or a regular user who's got 1,000 steam power, they can wield a certain amount of influence with that. If they split that steam power into 1,000 accounts, they haven't necessarily gained, according to the math on the blockchain, they haven't gained anything by splitting their votes into multiple accounts. So currently we're not seeing an issue there. But we'll continue to discuss and look at the implementation details more closely as we design them more. To tell you the truth, we have not laid out all the schematics for the proposal yet, but we have been talking about it because we're excited about it. But hopefully in the next couple months we can get, or Steemit Inc. at least can get out a technical proposal for that feature.
If I see someone that I really like their curating, can I allocate a portion of my voting power to them, to their account? In a sense, giving up that portion and letting them use it because I really value their curation.
Yeah, I think that's one of the core tenets in the idea, is that you can take a piece of your influence and you can just, it's kind of like you have a shovel. Just imagine you lend your shovel to your neighbor. Now your neighbor can do anything they want with that shovel. They can go dig a hole, they can use that to go build a house, and they can reap all the benefits from that. Or potentially you could set it up so that you lend someone a shovel, and every time they dig up, a chest of gold and treasure, they have to pay you 5% of the. You have a 5% rake on anything they find, or something like that. So really, all we're doing is formalizing the accounting, but the arrangements that you would have with the people that you might delegate voting power to would be, between you and them.
How would the rewards be dealt out? Would they go to the original owner, or would there be a possibility to give it out to the people who are curating?
Right, so the economic incentives would have the same sort of flexibility, where you can either give away all the potential steam power rewards from curating to the people you're delegating to. So if I give 100 steam power to Joe Schmo, and Joe, does all this voting, and he does a really good job voting, then he would get all the rewards from that, and I would get nothing. Or I could set it up so that I give, or I just take another piece of my steam power, I give it to somebody else. I say, for all the curation rewards you earn with this steam power, I'll take 50% of it, or something like that. So you might have some people create very altruistic curation guilds, and you might have other people who use it as a sort of way of managing their Steam power. Um, so it would be very flexible. Um,
One functionality I'm anxiously waiting for is the memos, or not the memos. What are they called? The messages.
Private messaging.
Yeah, private messages that is encrypted. That would be amazing to build apps for phones, so people can communicate over the Steam blockchain.
yeah, the messaging thing is interesting, and more, I should say, compelling. Now, a lot of work on private messaging has already been done on the blockchain level. Um, it's not 100% complete, but a lot of work has been done. We're very excited about it, and it's something that would be compelling on mobile apps and things like that. It would also be compelling on Steemit.com. I mean, think about your Gmail interface and your GChat. In the bottom left-hand corner, you could have something as simple as that allows you to kind of keep tabs on every network, and and kind of communicate real time while you're looking at the bigger picture of all these blog posts.
Can I just ask you about witnesses? In the past day, Charlie Shrem has gone from almost no one on the witness list to rank 16, is it now? And it's a bit concerning that to say someone with a lot of money could, for example, just instantly get many people into the top 19, rather than needing any free, time-based.
Yeah, so we actually covered this a little bit earlier. Charlie's a guy who's showed up to the platform more than a month ago now, I think, and I hadn't known him before he got here at all. I'd barely heard of him, actually. Is what I was telling these guys, and he came and he was very excited to learn about this, because there's some compelling new things going on with Steem. And he started to do very well, and he started to bring people to the platform. And he has, what I've learned, is a very accomplished entrepreneurial background. And he's got a deep Rolodex, and he's very influential in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency space, which is an area where Steem could probably use more influencers and more credit. So, I sort of see Charlie as a potential a really strong, mover and shaker for Steem, if he gets involved. So he decided he wanted to come in and go full time, and to me that was really exciting. And so I ended up getting on the phone with him a couple times, and we've chatted a little bit, and I really wanted to kind of feel him out. So I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to do that, and actually it worked out where I was in New York the week before last having meetings, and I was driving back, and you go through Pennsylvania on the way, and that's where he was. So it worked out really well. I ended up having lunch with him, and he's a great guy, and everything I've seen so far, he's been bringing new ideas, great energy, and he's got a commitment to the network that goes far beyond block production. He's committed to building tools. He's brought in some developers from his past experience with BitInstant and his other businesses to get things up and running. And he wants to be an advisor and a mentor to a lot of the entrepreneurs and the developers who are building things already. It's, to me, a very exciting and compelling case for having someone become a witness. As I was saying before, witnesses in terms of block production is becoming a dime a dozen. We have almost 80 who are fully upgraded and have very good uptime. Very few missed blocks. So witnesses need to really set themselves apart. And some guy 123, you're an example of someone who's doing a great job at that. You're building all these tools, and I really respect that. And that's why I made sure to go out and vote for you as a witness, because I was really impressed. And same for Charlie. I was really impressed, and I think that he's going to do a lot to grow the ecosystem. So he asked me for a vote. I gave him a vote because I had felt him out, and I can see that he's committed. And the thing with witnesses is if someone's not doing their job, if they're not living up to the expectations that they created for themselves, then people can remove their votes. And we've also talked about the future of witnesses and where are we really going. Yes, we want these people who are going to make an impact. What do we want for Steam? We want the best, right? If Coinbase decided, hey guys, we really want to be a big part of the Steam ecosystem, and I'm not saying this because they've expressed this at all. I'm just using them as an example of a major influence in the cryptocurrency space. If they were to say, let's be a part of Steam, let's run a witness node, and let's make sure that people have access to Steam through these USD gateways in the United States. The community would say, oh my God, that's such a great value add for the ecosystem. Let's make Coinbase a witness if they want to be, because that's good for them and this is good for us. So we should, as a community, look for opportunities like this to support people who are going to grow the ecosystem, and I think Charlie's a good example of that.
I don't.
Go on.
I was saying I don't disagree with the votes for Charlie, but I'm just a little concerned that someone can go from not being anywhere on the witness list to 16 in the single day. It seems like a bit of a problem if one can just go from no one to a top 19 witness, where it's top 19 should have like some evidence of reliability.
Well, it's not arbitrary. It's based on the people who actually have stake in the system voting for him.
I have a question. The account Steemit recently sent almost 2.5 million Steam to 3 new accounts. Can you explain that a bit?
Yes, those are either advisors or contractors or employees of Steemit.
Can I ask something, Ned? Hi, by the way.
Hey there, is that Gav?
No, sorry.
It's Repholder.
1 minute, sorry. I love you, Ned.
While Repholder is sorting his mic out, you said about growing the community. Are you planning on introducing a general marketing team that goes out there and speaks on behalf of Steam on the other big crypto spaces, like for example Bitcoin Talk or I don't know, newspapers and so on and so on and so on?
So as a company, as Steemit Inc., we want to grow the value of Steam, absolutely, but I think it's also very important for us to remember that a big part of this, if not maybe one of the most important aspects, is that this is a movement of a decentralized group of people around the world. And there are some things that should be, if people see opportunities for things like going over to Bitcoin Talk and representing, that can be community driven as well. As far as Steemit Inc., yes, we have plans for doing more on the marketing side. I will be doing a lot of traveling, a lot of speaking, and a lot of talking, but we don't believe we're the only group of people pushing this forward. So we want to make sure people feel empowered to take the brand where they want to take it. The Steam brand is available for everyone to do with what they can. This is, we are a swarm of people, and we need to recognize where the opportunities are as a community and react. And if we can kind of, be birds of a feather in that way, we'll be, more responsive, and we'll have more recognition outside the community. But yeah, as a company, we're hiring a lot. I'm talking to a lot of people. If anyone in particular has some experience that they think would, really benefit Steemit.com, whether it's on the marketing side or the developer side. We're certainly hiring web devs and potentially blockchain engineers. And on the marketing side, we're looking for someone. We put out an application for, what would we call it, social media manager or community manager and social media coordinator or something like that.
Where can those applications be found?
That doesn't sound like a marketing job.
No, that's a social media manager job. Now, there's also potential to have someone more experienced who can work on marketing, messaging, work with the PR group that we have, that we're working with, and to do outreach to, different news outlets and maintain relationships and strategize and things like that. That's a position that requires someone with more experience. If there's someone who thinks fits that bill, feel free to pass their resume to me. You can also check out, if you're looking for all these job postings, there's steemit.com/@steemitjobs, where we've started to post a few of these. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me or to our head of operations, Alex. He can be reached at alex@steemit.com. You can send resumes to jobs@steemit.com.
I bought the steemit.dk, and in the future I'm looking to create a language-specific portal for Steemit, in the Danish version, right? So how do you view that? Is that something you welcome, or and is there a way that you propose I could monetize that system?
Yeah, let 1,000 Steam interfaces blossom. We're already seeing a few. It's kind of started with the very beginning of the project back in April. The first interface was the command line interface, right? That still exists. It's still a way to get to the blockchain. Steemit.com was the second. SteamD as a block explorer without transaction signing came along. We're now seeing projects like there's others I want to mention. Some others I want to mention that I don't think have been announced yet. But the ones that we have seen are the mobile applications. There are guys like Good Karma, who's pretty active promoting his web application eSteam, which he's gotten through in the iOS App Store and the Android App Store, which is really, really impressive. I don't know if you guys saw that news about Apple allowing Steam applications, but he was a big part of that. So kudos to him for doing that for all of us. There's also been the Steamy application by another guy named Lynn, and he's got another partner who's working on a parallel Android app. There's a couple others. Azensu, a guy based in Germany, did another one. So we endorse these things. We want to support these applications. It will help to centralize things. And then we get to the part about business model. I mean, there's a few things, potentially they can be a part of the whole advertising, the whole attention economy side of things, where there's promoted content and advertising. Some other entrepreneurs have come to me and said that they want to set up certain businesses based on subscription models in reference to a sort of WordPress built on Steam. So there's still a lot of experimenting to do with business model, and that's true with any sort of startup. As you get going, you might have some ideas for monetizing, but a lot of times you have to figure it out as you go and massage things until you get something that really works.
Of course you are fussy and complex, Ring, and all you're just push to talk, ask questions. This is a speaker's corner, raw talk, uncensored, so feel free.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to ask a question, and then somebody, says, "Hey, feel free to ask a question." So,
your mic's really low.
Oh, sorry about that. Let me see if I can.
I also try to put on some headphones so you don't echo.
Love you, Dad.
Ned, could you speak on Golos? I believe some people have that question in mind and your decision to support them with Steemit Inc.
Sure. So the Golos team, I first met a couple of them it was either the end of March or mid-April. They reached out to me because they were really interested in Steam. And so that's kind of when I first met them. And, as Steam has had its success and it's grown a little bit, they reached back out with a sort of formal proposal where they're like, hey, we're really ready to kind of bring this to the Russian community. And we think we can build a Russian-specific Steam, and we would love to have your guys' help on that. So it's kind of a situation where Steam is open source, and it's really not our position to kind of get in the way there, and it's also potentially an experiment that can bring value to Steam holders. They're airdropping on Steam holders, and then they're approaching essentially a new market where most of the content. I mean, there is I've got to give credit to the Russians on Steam. There's some really great Russian community on Steam.
We rule.
You guys rule. So what is Golos? It's an opportunity to bring Steam into a new marketplace. It's an opportunity to learn more. It's an opportunity for more experimentation. That's what blockchain is all about: experimentation and going to new markets. But we've always kind of recognized language as being one of the more difficult constraints in the single token blockchain, single token content driven blockchain. So it was actually in the first Q&A that we ever did. We did it with Bittrex, that we said we don't know what the future is for different languages on Steam, and it very well could be that different language communities will need their own tokens to thrive. So that's what we'll see with Golos. We'll see how much faster the Russian community grows over there, and you can really think of these blockchains as sisters or sisters and brothers. And if they have success, that's success for us. Our success will help them. And what I'm hopefully seeing is a virtuous cycle.
Can I just add to that?
I come at this from the angle of the BitShares ecosystem. And I know in the past that we've had multiple share dropping chains that even innovated. They chose to do something beyond the scope of a vanilla clone. And if you look at them today, they got a lot of funding from the BitShares community, and that funding is now gone, and the projects are essentially abandoned. And that has actually been a bad thing for the BitShares ecosystem, because people who got their funds, who gave their funds over and were helping the entire project, actually lost funds and were not able to then turn those around and put them back into the core project.
Okay, so let's
something
pause.
that
I think that,
Sure.
that there's a difference between the Golos project as an experiment and learning opportunity and crowd sales. Because as many of you guys may know, there was no crowd sale on Steam, and that was specifically designed that way because it doesn't have the same implications as a crowd sale. And so, Fuzzy, maybe can I ask, is that more the issue? Are crowd sales the issue?
I think that's part of it. But I also think that, and whenever I listen to this, right, I hear that in the announcement, the reasons for it are because of the language barrier. And then I hear that the centralization of ownership of stake in Steemit around a language that is largely English speaking, and that these are problems. So then they want to create another chain, right? And this is a vanilla chain, and they're going to, sure, even if they share drop like stake weighted shares. Now, as a person who speaks no Russian, I'm holding Golos power, but who do I vote for in the ecosystem? And am I going to be an effective voter? Right? So we add into that this ICO is asking for 17% approximately, for something that it seems that Steemit Inc. is expected
what is
to
17%?
do a lot of it.
17%?
Yeah, 10% for
goes-
launching the chain, 7% for something else regarding
Not
launching
exactly.
of the chain.
Can I say it's 10% is going to the company that is funding the Golos, which which is by coincidence, let's say so, belongs or not by coincidence, belongs to the one of the people who's running the Golos company, and 7% and 7% goes to the people to the launch team. It's not exactly 17,
Okay,
it's actually 7%, and 10% goes to the company that is funding Golos.
But they're both connected, and the reason why I say this actually comes down less to who gets the stake and how the voting is connected to that stake. Because if you think about it, with 17% of the
I just
stake
wanna
in a system where most people don't, or a lot of the people who are going to buy in are not going to be Russian-speaking individuals. Because as far as I'm aware, the ICO is not restricted to Russian-speaking individuals only. So this means that there's a lot of stake that's not voting, and that there is a small
actually,
group
let me
of people who
chime
has a
in here,
lot
Fuzzy.
more access to vote.
I certainly understand that we do not want to divide this wonderful community we have here so far. So the one thing I asked these guys was, if you guys are going to do this, please do it all in Russian. If Steamers never become a part of this, maybe that's for the better. I don't want to see this hyped up in English. So they asked me, well, can we do at least one agreement post on Steam? I said, yes, we can do that. All of their ICO information will be in Russian. If people want to get involved with it, they'll have to go through Russian channels or have a translator. But as far as the details of their crowd sale, that's up to them. This is their experiment to run. We've seen a lot of these in the crypto space, and buyer beware. Okay, I don't. Everyone has to go into these types of things with their big boy pants on, and I'm not advocating that anyone do anything. What I am an advocate for is freedom, and that these people are running in another experiment with great technology. That to me is exciting.
With great responsibility, though, too, right?
They do. And so for me to get out there and give them a nod of approval, I looked at my experience with them, and from what I can tell, I don't want to give them more endorsements here, but they have approval from me on the grounds that they're working with great technology, and they've said that they're going to be hiring people to take care of all the technology. My company won't be taking care of any of the technology there. So it's up to them to make this a great project.
Can I say, as a person who's actually involved a lot in Steam, and by chance I'm involved a lot in, by no means I'm not somebody from the Golos team, but I'm involved a lot in the project, whether it's in marketing or whatever. And one of the main things actually that Ned mentioned, and I will add to that, is two things really. One is that by no means it's going to take away the Russian community from Steam, because as somebody who speaks Russian, and I'm involved a lot in the Russian community, it just gives me the incentive to make my Russian post on the Golos blockchain and my English posts, which are absolutely different to my Russian posts on the Steam blockchain. That's one. On the second thing, about the dividing the ICO information and everything. In fact, for example, we have our own Rocket Chat now, and one of the main things that we speak about, and one of the main things that the team is speaking about, is that they by no means want to advertise any information to the Steam community in English, exactly because they don't want to divide anybody who will be who's an English speaker and that will, come just for this fact of a big stake. So it is trying to be taken care of in that way.
They won't be able to raise that much money that they want, I think. The thing is, you're splitting up Steam now instead of just adding a tab so people can actually switch through languages, and it's the same economy basically. That's how I see it.
Well, it is. I can understand you in a way, but today, for example, a lot of them. I'm partially a writer, right? Or I want to call myself a writer, and I write in English. And today, a lot of the guys who write in Russian, even if there is a filter that is going to be available, and for example, there is already websites today. I think it's called steamlit.ru, something like that. I can't remember, sorry, but you can see basically the blockchain in Russian. So it's like steamed.com, but in Russian. And basically, somebody who writes in Russian a really great post, he will never get the attention that he is actually deserved on this blockchain today. Whether on the Russian blockchain, let's call it that way, he will get much more attention.
Ned, I have a question for you. In a few years, when Steemit grows larger than Facebook and Visa and MasterCard together, you are going to be one of the richest and most powerful men in the world. What are you going to use that wealth and power for? Do you want to start your own country with your own army or something grand like that?
That's a very interesting question. I think that it's really hard to look that far ahead with such a critical mission ahead of us. We have a great community to build. We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of developers and entrepreneurs to onboard into the ecosystem, and that's all of us. But I don't want to take my eyes off of that. What do I want to personally do after, later in life? I don't know.
Retire.
I'll run for president or something. We'll see.
First we win and then we celebrate. I have no problem seeing Steemit overgrow Facebook and anything else and become a giant on the internet.
Yes, I actually have something to say, if I'm able to talk. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, sure. Just while we're speaking on the same topics about trying to overtake Facebook, one of the things I've noticed that really a lot of people around the world are interested in is actually sports. If you just search in Facebook about sports, you will see all sorts of Facebook groups with 100,000 people, 80,000 people, all about sports. I actually recently just thought of creating something called Steam Sports that just went live recently a few days ago. It's a little bit different. It basically has sports betting involved, but not in the traditional sense where you actually have to pay money in and where you get money out. You basically win Steam power, which essentially helps to try and get users powered up and to try and get them essentially higher up in the Steam status where they can have more utility. But at the same time, there has been some people, well, I'd say only two really, who really don't like the idea. What do you think about the idea?
So this question's for me.
Yes, sorry.
I support almost all types of content, and I should take a closer look at the Steam Sports post. But I guess it's really coming back to gambling. Is that where the other users seem to take issue?
Yeah, I think so. Look, one of the users, which I didn't agree with him, he didn't like the fact that it would bring those type of people. That particular user wants Steam to be more of an elitist platform where there's only intelligent people on here, and he seems to feel that sports people aren't intelligent, and then I'm going to be bringing the wrong kind of people, first of all, which I don't think that's right. I think Steam is supposed to be for everybody, isn't it?
Absolutely. And if I talk about the way I see the vision, I think we should be building the largest, most supportive community possible, while still continuing to maintain and improve the small town feeling, where reputation matters and things like that. Hopefully we'll see interfaces, Steemit.com included, over time be better and better at segmenting people's different interests, so that go ahead.
Oh no! I didn't mean to knock you off, but I was just sorry. I thought you were done. I was just gonna say that. I created Squeak.io, which supports totally different content than Steemit, and because it's a different interface, I got to choose to go a different route. And in that
Twitter, right? Like
in the
Twitter
version
type
4 that I'm
of
about to
service?
implement, Fuzzy, your mic is off. In version 4 that I'm going to release soon, we have like a bunch of new features like language settings, and we handle things a bit of a different way. But yeah, Steam as a back end can handle lots and lots of different type of content.
Yeah, that's right. So I think if we bring this back to Steam Sports,
Yeah, sure, thanks.
hopefully it's something that hey, how do you turn off the notifications for people leaving the channel? Is that
Oh
possible?
my god, yeah.
Settings.
Oh
Joining
yes,
kicked.
Here, let
Trolling
me just do that
aside
real
now,
quick. You guys
No
chime in. I'm going to
projects
try
were
to figure
open
that out.
source.
Thank you for that wonderful walkthrough. I think I got it. That's way better.
I'm so glad.
What were we? What was the last comment?
Yeah, he was about to say something about Steam Sports, going back to Steam Sports, Ned said.
Something about open source.
Yeah. So anyway, it's
Is anybody here?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so trolling aside now, if all these projects were open source, would they be able to be connected to the
which projects are you talking about?
Steam Q? I think it's Steam Q, the YouTube one, the Commerce one, the Russian one. If they were open source, would they be able to be added to Steam IT and in the same pool? I'm talking about
So
the same
my
reward
assumption is that they're all open source. Does anyone see it differently?
pool. I don't think so. Most of them are, I think, yeah, if not all of them.
I can speak for SteamQ. It will be open source, and currently it's meant to be built on top of Steam, so it's not its own coin. So, yeah, there's no problem there.
I'm just saying, wouldn't it be better the same with the Russian? I know, okay, they might have their different model in mind, but sharing the same economy, that's what I said. Somebody added me to a channel to basically tell them why it's a bad idea to support as a different project. What's the point of being on Steam at all if you want to be a different project? It's like Descent or whatever other social media networks, content hubs are coming out. Why don't you guys consider it? Steam Inc. Incorporated, consider adding some of these things internally onto the Steam IT site. Maybe it's better. Synergy, like Ethereum has.
Fuck Ethereum for the record.
So you're talking about like the particular. Are you talking about the particular features like Furion's working on SteamQ, which is video hosted on IPFS, which I think is great? Are you talking about integrating a particular feature like that? Are you talking about integrating Golos, the point system of Golos, like in its own section? Like you're really talking about connecting things just through the web interface, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, in the web interface, because basically that's what most people use, and that's what mainstream users will use.
Right, but you're not suggesting do it all on the same protocol or something like that, right? As far as Golos. Yeah, I'm just trying to clarify exactly what you're saying. I mean, Steemit needs to achieve, a certain clear user experience, and as and maybe I don't know when you joined, but as I was talking about earlier, we're as a company working towards developing a really terrific user experience. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to social media. We look at Facebook and Twitter, and these are titans that have been around for more than a decade, and
yes, but the thing is. Sorry to stop you while you're talking, but the thing is that Steam isn't a social network. It has social network-esque type of reward system and the likes and all that, but it's a content hub. It's more towards writers rather than
right. So Steemit. So that's right. Steam is the platform, and Steemit.com is just one web interface. We've already seen more than a handful of applications built on top of Steam, and we see many more in the works.
So let's make Golos one of those.
So it's the way that the data is represented
you're saying make
on
Golos,
the site.
You're saying make Golos another interface. That's what you're saying, right?
No.
On top of the Steam blockchain instead of their own blockchain.
Without the token. The point of having a different token is kind of mixed bag. You never know what will happen. But the thing is that I take it, because I've been in Ethereum for I don't know how long, the way they do it, even though they have internal tokens, if one of those projects were outside Ethereum, it wouldn't be as big. There's synergy between everything, even though some do have their own tokens.
So you're talking about the gas. You're talking about the gas model. So I'm just trying to get to the crux of the issue, because on one hand I'm hearing people say, combine everything into one interface, and on the other hand I'm hearing everyone say combine everything into one protocol. But these are two different parts of the stack. So we just need to be careful when we're talking about these things, so we're not, confusing
I
our
just want
points.
to interrupt and say we are here on steamspeak.com with Ned Scott of Steemit right now. If you are listening on the radio and want to ask a question, join in. Click the blue button, follow instructions. Also, everybody is entitled to their own opinion here, so we are not necessarily agreeing. This is a free-for-all, ask me anything. Everybody has a chance to get heard, and this is kind of what free speech is all about, not to let somebody out or take somebody in, but this is a round table where I guess the purpose is to make Steemit, the best platform for everybody, so everybody has something to say. So, all right, Ned, Nate Brune, Cly, just Fuzzy, Furion, Complex Ring, you all got something, so let's go.
Great stuff, guys. Really enjoying the conversation. Blockchain, there's so many opportunities and so many different ways to take things. I think the comparison to Ethereum is interesting. The way Ethereum is set up is that Ethereum is this gas for all these other applications. So you buy Ethereum, you buy Ether so that you can then run your own application, and essentially all the transaction fees are paid in Ether. There is a case to do that, for something like Golos, but it's difficult in implementation, and it changes the economics of the second project of something like Golos, and the whole thing is open source. So I don't think, there's nothing that stops someone from building another Steam. So all we can do is recognize where our opportunities are, where our opportunities for partnership are, where where we can react and where we can support.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt, but what is the license exactly then? If it's not, if it's open source,
so
sure, people
Fuzzy,
can.
So whose license is it, right? So the license is Steemit Inc.'s license, right? And it's not something. It's not a community tool where people can look to us and say, "Hey, you have to go tell those people to not do this." because you have a license on
Sure.
it, so you can sue them. So that's not our business. We're not in the business of doing that. We want to see chains flourish and do well. We want to see more experimentation in the space. And frankly, we believe that an experiment like this has merit.
Aren't you concerned that people are not going to want to power up?
What do you mean?
I mean,
not
if I'm
power
stuck
up?
in a chain for 2 years that somebody can easily clone, like a vanilla clone, and then get the nod, then what is the reason for somebody to stick with one chain and power up if there's not an expectation of innovation beyond just the vanilla services and maybe a change of a language?
It's easy to clone, but it's not easy to get all the users to your system.
It's a different
Yes,
market,
but-
Fuzzy. Fuzzy, you're conflating a number of things. I think maybe we're all just not going into this with the same information, and maybe I haven't done a good enough job of telling
That's
you
why
guys
we're here,
what I
right?
know. But frankly, I don't see this as a competitor to Steam. I see it as something that's going to
franchise.
spread the technology into a new market that we would not have been able to get to ourselves.
But why can't you do that with the Steam blockchain and them working
That's my
on that
question.
blockchain?
So why? I mean, we can go into the technicals, but I would just ask you to present how you see that happening from a technical standpoint.
Well,
Well,
these
there's
same developers whatever they're developing, why couldn't it be done on the blockchain without launching a new one?
Yeah, specifically, I would like to see if the root comment was just metadata tagged with Russian, then you could display it on the Steemit website with some minor modifications.
The problem is not displaying it, though. The problem is completely different. What I was saying, the problem is that Russian writer, somebody who writes about, doesn't matter, medicine or psychology or whatever, okay, you can see all the posts in Russian, that's not a problem, but who would have voted him?
Yeah, it's
All
really
the
about the
Russian
economics.
voters.
It's
The
really
Russian, sorry Ned, to interrupt you, the Russian voters, their voice is worth something like 0.05 cents or whatever.
I understand now.
I understand you as well, but you're looking for 3 million. You won't get 3 million with
Not
that
me,
smaller
okay, not me. I'm not a representative of the company. I'm just voicing my opinion.
I understand what you mean, but they want 3 million and they want 17% of it. If you
Not
can't have
17
enough
cents.
votes for a couple of cents, what you looking to do an ICO for?
Guys,
So
I think
this is a conversation, guys. I think that this is a conversation to have with the
Go
Russian
talk with
team.
Golos.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
this
agree.
is really
Ned.
something to bring up with them.
I have the real solution for you, Ned. If you create incentives for people to use the Steemit blockchain when they're creating language-specific portals, like for example referral rewards, people will rather use your system than create their own blockchain.
They are logging referrals at Steemit, if that's something you're interested in.
I would be very interested in that for my own project on creating a Danish language Steemit version. I would want to
How
be
does
able
this look?
to monetize my users that I'm getting into the system.
Magat, you speak Danish, and you're wanting to do this portal. How are you planning on doing it exactly? Can you describe to people who are interested in this discussion? Because this has been a really big thing for me since I've seen it. I generally try to stay back, and I honestly don't know that I'm... I think that a lot of this comes from I've asked a lot of questions and have received 0 responses from them. Ned is the closest to getting responses that are stuff that I can work with as possible, and he's not in the position where he's supposed to be like really answering things for them. So I would love to hear what your response is on how to fix this and how the portal works.
Ideally, I would want the Steemit code base to support the functionality that I could, as a user, refer all the users that was signing up on my portal and giving me some kind of monetary reward, maybe part of their rewards or something, and then simply limit the language to Danish, and then simply a clone of Steemit in a sense,
of the interface, but in the Danish language.
Yeah, and using the same blockchain.
And there's nothing stopping you from doing that. I think it would be a very noble project.
Well, the only thing stopping people from doing that is that they really have no incentive to do it. It's difficult to monetize because there is no system in Steemit to incentivize.
Well, part of the system is, for most development projects, is by actually posting them on Steam. For example, when I posted Under Steam, which is Steam over Tor, I received over $3,000 just for the initial post. The follow-ups made almost 300. These posts on Steam been developed for a long time.
Sure, you can post about your project and get rewards, but you're not getting rewards for the individual users that you are getting into the platform.
Well, you will become the Danish king then, right? So then you will be like the whale of Denmark in your
bingo. That's the way I see it too.
Right. So
curation
curation guilds can potentially help this too. Just to bring that back to that potential feature. If you get someone to sponsor Danish who's got a lot of stake, then suddenly there's more stake, going towards building the Danish community, which provides more incentives for you hosting the website, and for people who are signing up can earn more rewards for posting in Danish. But there's no guarantee that you'll get that patron, that you'll get that sponsor. But it's possible. I mean, there's so much experimentation, so much learning to do here, guys. It's really exciting. I think we can all look forward to more and more developers putting out projects. It's been happening at such a rapid pace. It's really only been about 2.5, almost 3 months, where we've seen this thing kind of almost at full potential. And there's more than 80 applications built on Steam today, and now there's forks of Steam and all this. This is only going to move faster and be more exciting. So, I'm really happy where we are and where we have left to go. And I'm really happy to have come to SteamSpeak today. I have to get going, but guys and ladies, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's do this
Thank
again.
Awesome to have you, man. Pop in anytime.
Thanks, Ned.
I love you, Ned.
Thanks, guys.
See you,
Bye-bye.
Ned.
Thank you first.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.